These testimonials are representative of my or our experiences, but the exact results and experience will be unique and individual to each person. The information provided herein is not medical advice and is not intended to substitute for the advice of your personal physician or other healthcare providers. Welcome to The Beautiful Bag. This is your host, LeeAnne Hayden, cancer survivor, and more importantly, Ostomy lifer. Each and every week, I'm going to be bringing a special guest or some inspiration for you and a few little stories along the way so that you can learn what life is like for us to be living in an ostomy and why we all think it's a beautiful bag. So listen in and let's get started. Well, hello, everybody, and welcome to this week's episode on the Beautiful Bag podcast. I am here with my new friend, Kayla. We have met on social media, right? Where we meet everybody, I've met on social media. But before we get started, I also want to make sure that you guys know that I created a free confidence guide, right? Because being in an ostomy is not easy for us, every single day. So there's a few things that I've done over the last 7 years now to help boost my confidence and living in an ostomy. So if you want to grab your free guide, just go over to the website, leeannehayden.com, put in your email, and you can download that free guide for yourself, and then we can stay connected there too. So anyways, let's get into this episode because Kayla has such a great story, and I'm not going to take her thunder. I'm going to let her share her journey with us. So Kayla, welcome to the podcast.
Thank you for having me. I'm really excited.
Yeah, well, we're really excited to have you here. So tell us, let's start at the beginning. Walk us through, your journey. What brought you into being in your ostomy?
Yeah, so I was about 13 years old when I started having symptoms, and I think a lot of times people usually ask me like, what are those symptoms? And I feel like we have a disease that can be kind of gross to talk about, but I'm so open about it. I'm like, yeah, let me tell you. So I had the classic like bloody diarrhea, like lots of blood, stomach cramping, like felt like I was getting like stabbed in the stomach, and so weak. I was pale, all the things. And I remember going to my family doctor and he was just like, oh, it's a fissure, something, just passed it off as like, oh, it's nothing really. And luckily my grandma was like, no, I think it's a little bit more than that. So we got referred down to a children's hospital, and then they did an endoscopy and colonoscopy and found that I had ulcerative colitis. So I was diagnosed right at 13, and I was put on mesalamine, so Asacol, like regular oral medication. And I actually was my disease was pretty much controlled by that for many years. So I was 13 when I was diagnosed with that. I think around 20, I think I was 20 years old when it seemed like I just needed a little bit more. So we upped that medication, and then I turned 26, and it seemed like overnight that medication just stopped working. And so then my doctors were like, oh, okay, this is weird, but let's try, going on biologics. They gave me the list of different medications I could try. And I started kind of thinking, I reached out on YouTube to look up like, what is the next step? What if this one doesn't work? Then what? So I actually went for the big whammy, the Remicade infusion, which is usually something you don't start off with. I feel like, I don't know, my doctor made it sound like you start with Humira injections and kind of like work your way up. But I felt like I was so sick at that point that I was like, let's just go for the big guns and see if that'll manage my disease. Okay. And I failed that medication after a couple months, ended up back on prednisone. Then we tried Humira injections for another couple months, failed that one, back on prednisone. And then I was like, all right, let's look seriously into what does surgery look like, And luckily there were people like Hannah Witten, Maggie, I can't remember what her last name is, but they're like pretty big on YouTube about sharing their story. And then another girl named Emily, I think I can't remember what her YouTube title is now off the top of my head. But anyway, luckily there were several people who were already posting about that and what life is like. And at the time, J-pouch was such a big thing. And I was like, I don't know if that's right for me though. So I started the conversation with my GI doc, and the one I was seeing at the time was kind of like, oh, kind of like cautious about even considering surgery. She was like, you know what? medication is going to be the best thing for you. So I ended up switching GI docs because I was like, no, I need someone who's going to actually like listen to me and understand like where I'm coming from. Because I felt like at the time I just didn't have a quality of life at all. Like I was survival mode and that was it. So I switched to another GI and I'm so thankful that I like listened to my gut, ironically, to like switch
The
and
gut
find some,
knows. The gut
right?
knows.
Yep, exactly. So he really listened and it was kind of like, here's our action plan. We're going to try one more medication, but get you on the road to surgery, you know? And I knew for me that, you know, having kids was a really big, important thing. So I was 26 when it started the whole like biologic journey. And then 28 was when I was like thinking about having the surgery. And so we ended up, I was referred down to the Mayo Clinic in Rochester, Minnesota, and had an amazing surgeon. He was like the best ever, so caring and so good. And I remember sitting in the office talking to him because I had actually, okay, this is where it gets kind of choppy because being on prednisone for so long, I feel like it completely wiped my short-term memory. And I kind of call those like 2.5 years my dark years because I don't remember a whole lot. And I just have to like think of like the timelines of like, okay, I knew this was when whatever happened. I had met one doctor before my surgeon at Mayo Clinic, and he would kind of was like, because I had my hair done, my makeup done for the day. Like you kind of just try to look like you're not sick because you just get sick of people being like, well, what's wrong with you, you know?
Right,
And
right.
he told me, he goes, well, you look like you're feeling pretty good today. And I was like, what? I couldn't believe. So he didn't refer me to surgery. And so then finally I went back and I like, consulted my regular GI again. And I was like, look, this is what they said to me. He's like, nope, try again. So we got back in the system again, got a referral to the surgeon, and he was actually amazing. And I told him everything I'd gone through, and they agreed surgery was the best thing. But it was interesting because they were still trying to push like J pouch is the best route. And I explained that, I've done my own research a little bit, and it's really important for me to be able to have kids someday if I can, And up until this point, I never had even had a pregnancy scare or anything. So I was kind of like, gosh, I hope I can even have kids. But, my GI explained your body is so sick that it wouldn't really have allowed to carry a baby because it was fighting itself with the ulcerative colitis. And so I remember, talking with my surgeon, and I'm like, I'm pretty set on keeping the ostomy bag, having kids, and then we can talk about, if I were to do a J pouch in the future, or if I were to do the Barbie butt and make it a permanent ostomy bag. So I still have my rectal stump, and, I had the surgery 3 years ago in February. So it was right before COVID hit and all of that. So I was really lucky to like get it done, and then recover and all that. And so then, let's see. So then, 2.5 years after surgery, I was married, and my husband and I had been trying to get pregnant, and nothing, not even like a pregnancy scare or anything. And then we ended up getting a divorce last year, but it ended up being for the best because we both are now with people that like I think we were ultimately meant to be with. And then in March this year, a couple months ago, I found out I was pregnant. So it kind of was like the whole thing. It's so wild how like I just knew that, my goal was like to get pregnant and, have a better quality of life, which I really do feel like having that surgery, I instantly felt better. The next day, I woke up out of surgery and I just felt like, I just felt like my body wasn't wasting all this energy trying to like fix itself,
Right.
It was wild. But
And that's been 2.5, and that was 2.5 years ago, 3 years ago, 3 years ago.
3 years. Yeah. Yep.
Yeah. Yeah. And so, I mean, that's a lot to go through from the age of 13 to the age of 29, 28, 29, right?
Yep.
So that's a lot that you had to go through. How emotionally you were sick through all of that. How were
Mm-hmm.
your emotions and your feelings? Like, how was your mindset through those years?
It was, at first when I was a kid, when I was, 13 to 18 and I was a teenager, I felt like I was a freak. You know what I mean? Like I was like, I don't notice any of my friends having to
Oh,
take medication every day. And it just wasn't something that we talked about back then,
mhm.
really at all. And then crazy enough, I went back for my 10-year high school reunion. So I was 28, and I had so many classmates come up to me and they're like, "Oh my gosh, I had the same thing when we were in high school." And I'm like, "God, if we could have just talked about that and, been able to
Right?
have our own little support group, it would have been so much easier, I think, to go through all of that." And I feel like that's why I appreciate social media so much now because we're normalizing having something that isn't normal, like
Right.
an
Right.
uncomfortable topic or an uncomfortable feeling and stuff. So I think that honestly, social media helped my mindset and my confidence and my acceptance of having an ostomy bag now
Mhm.
way more than I think if it wasn't around. So
Right. And that's a good point, right? The way social media has been for all of us. I mean, there's good things, there's bad things to it, but
yeah,
social media in itself right now is it's amazing when it's used correctly. Like you said,
yeah,
you're out on YouTube. See, I am searching for people and talking to people through Instagram, right? Like I'm looking at people on
yeah,
Instagram, or we connected on Facebook, but it was just like looking at people on YouTube. If you sit there and you think Google like how to like, you know,
yeah.
who else is in an ostomy or where to talk to somebody about something. YouTube is a great channel as well to go to, and you
Mhm.
can see people's faces, right? I think that's the great thing about social media. Like, hey, you look normal. Like, hi,
Yeah,
I'm normal. But like, we're
right.
human beings. So now you've gone through all of that. You've been in your ostomy for 3 years. You went
Mhm.
through a divorce. You found a new love, and now we're having a baby. I mean, yeah. So you're what, 3 months along?
Yep, I'm officially 14 weeks along, so we made
Yay.
it into the second trimester. And that's what's been kind of cool too is that, before getting pregnant too, I was kind of like, well, can I have a traditional delivery? Does it have to be C-section? And so that was a big part of finding my OB doctor. I was like, I want someone who has experience in seeing kind of a lot of different things. So the doctor that I chose, she is awesome. She actually is from the East Coast and worked at a really high volume hospital. And so when I met with her, I kind of was like treating it as an interview almost. And I was like, okay, so what do you feel like with my ostomy bag? She's like, oh, no problem. You can have a totally normal vaginal birth. I have no worries about it. And I told her I was meeting with a new GI because I moved across the country too. I'm from Minnesota. I live in Texas and I have now for the last 2 years. So she was like, get you into a GI that you feel comfortable with. And she's like, honestly, if he has any worries about you delivering vaginally, here's my number, have him call me. I'm totally confident with it. And we'll have you, feel as confident as you can through your whole procedure. So it's
Oh,
it's kind of it makes me feel good that like she's so confident that I can have a normal pregnancy that anyone else goes through,
right.
even though I'm missing an organ.
Right. We're missing pieces of our body. But it's the other thing too is there's been a few people on Instagram, EMC. She goes by EMC Brown.
Yeah. Oh my
Yeah.
gosh. I
Yeah.
I love following her.
Yeah. So she's had two children. Then there's
Yep.
Crohn's mummy. I think that's what she
Yeah.
calls herself, Crohn's mummy. She's had a couple of children, and that was
Yeah.
her biggest thing too. Is like, I want to have babies, I want to have children. And then, who is I'm blanking her name. She does all the lifting. She's from Australia. She's been in fitness competitions with her bag, and then she went into a
Oh,
pouch,
cool.
and she just had a baby.
Okay, okay.
Yeah, so
That's
with
so
a
nice.
day pouch, and so she just had a baby, and I'm
Oh, I love that.
blanking her name right now, but it'll come to me. But again, it's normalizing that you can live a normal life. Like, you can have
Yeah.
children when you're in a colostomy bag or an ileostomy bag. Like, it doesn't matter, or even a urostomy bag, like whatever it is, you can still live a normal life. I'm so thrilled for you that this is all happening for you. So now, what's the future? What are you looking at now from a future for yourself? It's like, okay, I've got this whole new life, and it's
Right.
pretty fresh. And you're talking about it and you're communicating about it, and now we're having a baby. And new man, what are you looking at for the future? What's some of the dreams that you have?
Oh boy, that's a good question actually. I kind of, You know what's crazy is I was thinking about this the other day because I always like to do this thing. It's called future boarding. There's a book about it. Sarah Centrella wrote it, and I've done it every year. You know, it doesn't always have to be New Year's Eve. I do it whatever throughout the year that I feel inspired to. But I love that she focuses on different sectors of your life. So not just like job or money related. It's also like relationship and lifestyle and stuff. And I think my biggest dream is more so to find balance in life, which I know sounds very like broad, but I want to feel like I'm putting healthy food into my body. I want to get back to working out now that I'm not morning sick anymore. So
Mm-hmm.
honestly, my dreams are kind of like short term where I'm like, okay, I knew I was sick for so long, and I kind of feel like I have that second chance of life with my ostomy bag. And I always think about this. If I'm ever like in a slump or in a funk, I'm like, man, I would have been just dying to be in the body that I have now when I was so sick back then. So, like, what can I do to really embrace this body, you know? So, fueling it and moving it and all of that is really my next goal here.
Oh, I love that goal. I love that goal. I'm way an advocate about nutrition
Yeah.
and fitness and working out and moving your body and being holistic, right? There's a piece of
Yeah.
me that's I mean, I'm a holistic nutritionist on top of, you know, cancer survivor, ostomy, and the
Yeah.
podcast host and speaking engagements and all that fun stuff, right? There's that whole background of what I truly believe in, and fitness competitions, for crying out loud. And
Yeah.
I even did one with my bag, but um
That's so cool.
yeah, having that having that feeling of I need to treat my vessel like it deserves to be treated. And I did like something else that you said. You talked about when you feel down, how you overcome feeling down
Mhm.
is by saying, hey, listen, I was worse off before.
Yeah. Because I know people always say the thing of like, if you're having a bad day or you're feeling bad, someone else has it worse. And I just feel like that's not comforting to me because I'm like, I still want to feel like my down self right now, But I think of like, well, how did I feel 3.5 years ago? That's kind of, I just put it into my own, what I've already seen, my own eyes. And I feel like that really helps. And that's kind of, I don't know. I think another thing with social media is a lot of times it's a highlight reel. Like we post all of the good things. And overall, I feel like I'm a positive person, but I do notice that I maybe need to share a little bit more about the harder times because there are moments where I feel like, oh, I wish that you couldn't see my ostomy bag through my tight fitting dress today. Or, like I feel like everyone's looking at it, but then they probably aren't. They probably don't even notice it. It's just because like I see it.
Right.
And I don't know, I think it's normal to have those insecurities, even though overall you feel like you're accepting of your own body and you feel a level of confidence with it. It's just normal, like everyone else feels. You have those
Right.
days where like, ugh.
Right. I mean, and you look back, right? You look back at how
Yeah,
you felt when you were getting dressed in certain clothes prior to. It's like, oh, I mean, and again, women, we're horrible at this. It's like, oh, look,
yeah.
I got this roll here, or this is too tight, or we don't love our bodies the way we just should in general, and we've got to
Mhm.
get better. We just have to get better. But yeah, I get that. I get what you're saying about, wearing the outfit and saying, oh, can you see it? My granddaughter the other day, she came up to me, she's 4, and I had on white jeans because we can wear white. So I had on white
Yeah.
jeans. She came up and she touched my belly and she goes, Gigi, what's that? And I was like, oh, that's my belly. And I'm like, oh, that's my belly, right? Because I put on some weight. And I was like, wait a minute. No, she's actually asking, oh, honey, that's my bag. Like, and so she's just like curious. I go, remember that's where Gigi poos. And she's like, kind of like nods and
Yeah.
walks off, right? Like, oh yeah, that's just you. But it was that reminder. So but I totally get it. I get it with the clothing. So for a tip, what kind of clothes are you most comfortable in when you're wearing your ostomy?
That's a great question because mostly I'm actually wearing jean shorts right now, which I thought before surgery, I'm like, oh my gosh, I'm going to only be able to wear dresses for the rest of my life. It just was one of those thoughts that I never really knew about, I guess. But I find that if the jeans, whether they're shorts or, full length denim, as long as they're stretchy throughout the belly, That's the best thing. I did have to size up after surgery one, and I found that that gave a little bit more space for my bag to expand. But other than that, I find that leggings are my best friend.
Mm-hmm.
And then anything
Mm-hmm.
that just kind of gives a little bit of room for my bag to expand. That's kind of the thing that I always think about. But I was wondering about that too, where like maternity leggings are almost too stretchy because they are meant for the belly to expand, but I'm like, I still need that support for my bag. So I think I might end up just sizing up one in leggings, regular leggings, and see if that gives me that support with also like expanding for as I grow, you know?
Yes, because now your belly's going to grow.
Mm-hmm. Yep.
And then eventually you will probably get into that over the belly. I mean, listen,
Yes.
my baby's going to be 26 in a month. So, it's been a long time and clothes have changed, but maternity pants are maternity pants. They just come up over the belly. So yeah, so as you grow, so now you can start to wear like, okay, I'm giving a little give. And I like, you just gave another great tip. It was that what you realized is you needed to size up one size,
Mm-hmm.
have that little bit of give for your
Yeah.
body instead of trying to cram yourself into a small size. And again, that goes back to what we were saying a little while ago about loving our bodies as we are. We're not a
Yeah.
size, we don't need to fit into anything,
Yep.
like that whole thing, and just being accepting of who we are, right? I mean, think about it. Your ostomy comes out of your
Mm-hmm.
too, so that grows your waistline, and then
Yep.
add in, your bag needs some room because you don't want to, if you're in a colostomy bag, we have a lot of pancaking. I wear
Yeah.
I wear leggings, I wear Lulu, they're tight in there, but every time I feel it, because I'm in a colostomy, mine's solid, I feel it pushing out. I just pull the bag out a little bit, like pull my pants out a
Yep.
little bit, give it a little room, push it down, right? Usually
Exactly.
pushing it down and then
Yep.
doing that, right? So great. So we talked about tips, we talked about pregnancy, we talked about clothes, all that stuff. If there was, if there was, let's say there was one last thing that you would want our listeners to know, what would that be?
I have two. So
Perfect.
the first one, I am such a water lover, and I think it's really important because I had a big question of can I still swim and take baths and hot tub and jet ski and do things that are like a little more active, and you totally can, which makes me feel really good. And another thing too, I was really nervous about, will my bag fall off if I'm in the water too long? And I think it sometimes can depend on how well your seal is for sure, but as long as you're, making sure that it's all sealed up really good, I'm in the pool in the water for hours at a time and it's just fine. And then I think the other thing kind of related to pregnancy is that I have noticed that my stoma is already growing a little bit. And so I think it's only grown maybe like a quarter of an inch total so far in, I guess it would be diameter or circumference. And
Mhm.
so I've had to, I got used to being like, oh, my stoma is just one size and I just know it. So I pre-cut my bags and just I went about my day. It was a quick change. And now I'm finding that it's really important to measure it every single bag change, which I change my bag every 3 days, 4 days. I try to stretch it out as long as possible because they're expensive. So,
Yes, they are.
yeah, but measuring them, getting samples. I requested samples from Coloplast, and they're super good with sending you a variety of things if you let them know like what your trouble is with your current bag. And I just told them like I'm pregnant, so I know my belly's gonna grow. So I'm just trying to find options for as my stoma grows too, and they're great. It's such a good help, and you may as well get free samples while you can
Mhm.
and figure out what works best for you because it's going to change throughout our whole life, even as we get older too.
Absolutely. Absolutely. Everything changes, and then we're going to age with this, right? So
Yep.
those are some great, great tips. Again, I've said this 5 times. I'm so excited that you're having a baby. Like, I'm so excited that the dream of having a baby is coming true, right? We're going to say some prayers. So if people wanted to connect with you and they wanted to follow you and they were like, hey, where's Kayla? I want to talk to her. I'm pregnant or I want to get pregnant. I have questions. Where's
Yeah.
the best place for them to go to find you?
I would say on Instagram, you can find me Kayla.Glumac. It's Glumac. And then I also have a YouTube channel too, but I feel like messaging wise, that's the easiest way to get a hold of me. And I love connecting with people, and no question is too weird or gross or off the grid. I love it.
I love it. I love it. Well, Kayla, thank you so much for being here with us this week. We truly have appreciated it. And you have shared so many great little things. Your stories are amazing. You're going to help so many people, especially the moms out there that are wanting to get pregnant, and what is life like, and, growing from a young child
Mhm.
into the woman you are now. So congratulations on everything. I'm so happy for you.
Thank you. Thanks for having me too.
Oh, you're so, so welcome.
Thank you so much for joining us this week. If you enjoyed this podcast, get the behind the scenes at leeannehayden.com/ostomy updates. And also, if you found this episode encouraging, please screenshot it and share it on Instagram. And don't forget to tag me and also the person who was on the episode with me. I occasionally will do special gifts for anyone who does do a screenshot and share it on Instagram or in your stories. Also, lastly, please go to Apple or Google, rate, review, and subscribe to this podcast to keep up with them every single week. I enjoy you guys. Thank you so much for being here.